Since Russia first attacked Ukraine in 2014, the US has supported the Ukrainian government in a variety of ways. However, when Russia renewed its invasion in February 2022, the US scaled up its support. Today, US support for Ukraine is in the tens of billions of dollars, with a more precise figure at the end of this video. Let's discuss the US support for Ukraine and dig into exactly what the US is sending. There are a lot of misconceptions about this support, with some misunderstanding come from the complexities of the support itself, and some misunderstanding come from disinformation campaigns by Russia attempting to wither public support for Ukraine. When the war first started, the US had already invested around $1 billion into Ukraine. Initially, the US wouldn't announce any aid packages for Ukraine, instead opting to bolster NATO's eastern flank by activating the NATO Response Force, increasing US presence in Europe to over 100,000 personnel, and US investment in DoD inventories of around $350 million. 2 weeks later though, as Ukraine turned the Russian assault on Kiev backward, the US announced a $200 million aid package to Ukraine, which included assets to help with armored and airborne threats. Just 4 days later, the US would announce another package worth up to $800 million, which included the transfer of US military equipment to Ukraine. This equipment does not include modern variants, instead favoring older equipment due for retirement anyway, which still remain lethal and could be useful for Ukraine. Since then, the aid packages have continued to flow, with billions of dollars in assistance not only reaching Ukraine's military, but their government and civilian economy, helping the country to continue to function despite the state of near total war that Ukraine finds itself in. The weapon systems being sent to Ukraine made an immediate impact. Among the first of the systems to make it to Ukraine was the Javelin, which uses a fire and forget targeting system which lands the warhead on the tops of tanks and armored vehicles where the armor is the weakest. With Russia's ground forces relying heavily on tanks and armored formations, this was a potent match that allowed small Ukrainian infantry units to harass and destroy Russian armored formations all along the front. Following the Javelin, the US would send Switchblade drones, which are small personal drones that also target tanks and armored vehicles. Systems like these have made a real impact on Ukraine's warfighting ability and have prevented Russia from succeeding in their objectives. So what types of military aid has the US sent to Ukraine? Please note that this data is as of September 8th, 2023, so it doesn't include aid like the recently announced delivery of ATACMS, or Army Tactical Missile System, which will enable Ukraine to target Russian forces up to 190 miles behind the front line. Ukraine has received aid to every domain of warfare. Here is a complete list. I'll only point out the most interesting to me, but feel free to pause it if you want to digest each system in quantity. Starting with aid to Ukraine's air defense capability, the US has sent one Patriot air defense battery and munitions. This system has also made an immediate impact while defending Kiev from missile attacks. Originally, it was thought that the Patriot systems weren't capable of intercepting hypersonic missiles. However, the performance in Kiev has shown that this may not be true. There's also a series of air defense munitions that have helped Ukraine to contest the airspace and prevent Russia from achieving any decisive advantage in the air. Moving on to US aid to Ukraine's fires capability, the US has donated 38 high-mobility artillery rocket systems, or HIMARS, and ammunition. These systems are yet another example of a US system providing immediate battlefield effects, allowing Ukraine to target Russian command and control and logistics hubs deep behind front lines, forcing Russia to move them further back, impacting both their timeliness and supply and command and control to their frontline forces. The US has also delivered a large quantity of both artillery systems and ammunition in varying caliber. There are a lot of artillery systems and rounds provided, including specialized rounds like the 155mm RAM rounds. However, it's not enough to give Ukraine an advantage in fires. This is an area that Ukraine has to prioritize specific areas if it wants an artillery advantage. However, that does come at the cost of other areas where it may not be able to dedicate artillery support in a notable quantity. We'll be talking more about this in a moment. US aid to Ukraine's ground maneuver assets include 31 Abrams tanks, with the first Abrams tanks just arriving to Ukraine on 25th of September. We may start seeing footage of them on the front lines soon, and it would be interesting to see their performance in a high-intensity conflict like this, especially going up against Russian armor, which the Abrams platform was designed to fight. The US has also sent 186 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles. These have also made a significant impact, allowing Ukraine to launch its counteroffensive in the south, where Russia has built a complex and formidable defense network. Among other mobility assets include 239 field tankers and 105 field trailers, as well as 8 logistics support vehicles and equipment. The logistics equipment includes wreckers that allow for vehicle recovery, as well as MIGLICs for mine clearing. These platforms, as well as the fuel trucks, have greatly expanded Ukraine's mobility on the ground and abilities to sustain itself further away from railheads. The US has also donated a number of systems and platforms to aid Ukraine's aircraft and unmanned aerial systems suite. The volume and variety of drone systems being delivered to Ukraine highlight the complexion of this war and future wars like it. You only need to log into Twitter briefly to be inundated with drone footage, and you can tell the footprint of drones on the battlefield is quite large. Not only that, but they must be available to the smallest units possible and be able to be replenished rapidly and regularly. There are some videos of troops in trenches with drones on their wall in the dugout and a 3D printer for repair parts, which highlights the rapid consumption rates that these systems have. Furthermore, Ukraine will be able to receive F-16s, however this package is still being fleshed out as of today. Next is US support for Ukraine's anti-armor and small arms, which include the Javelin systems that we've already talked about, as well as additional anti-tank and small arms rounds. Now to US support for Ukraine's maritime capability, 2 Harpoon coastal defense systems with anti-ship missiles have made a tremendous impact in targeting Russia's Black Sea fleet. This includes the sinking of the capital ship, the Moskva, as well as targeting and damaging other ships within the Black Sea Fleet. This is not only with the Harpoon coastal defense systems, but also with the unmanned coastal defense drones that have been provided. Other capabilities that Ukraine has received include satellite communications antennas and other various defense capabilities that have helped Ukraine to have a holistic defense. It should be noted that the US equipment shown being provided to Ukraine is not modern and is either due for retirement or drawdown. Current US military formations are not losing their own equipment as part of this aid. However, there is something to say about ammunition aid. For the US and really NATO as a whole, ammo production is woefully short of Ukraine's needs. Both Russia and Ukraine are absolutely flying through ammunition. However, something often not discussed in public debate on this is that this is often a reflection of Russian and Ukrainian doctrine. The US doesn't rely on artillery the way that Russia and Ukraine does. Instead, the US relies on achieving air superiority and targeting from the sky. While there are pros and cons on relying on artillery or air support, I personally don't think that the US is mortgaging its own security with its artillery aid to Ukraine. If anything, it's highlighting current shortfalls that should be addressed now instead of in the future when a conflict that the US is involved is brewing. Not only does the US fight a different style of warfare, but the wars the US is most likely to face in the next decade will likely have less emphasis on artillery and more on maritime and air warfare. Altogether, the US aid to Ukraine has passed $46.5 billion. This aid is predominantly military aid, but it has also financed the Ukrainian government, allowing it to pay salaries and provide services, as well as subsidizing certain parts of the Ukrainian economy, keeping Ukrainian citizens at work despite the ongoing war. Of course, this isn't designed to go on forever, and we should hope and pray for a quick, complete, and just end to the war. Like this video if you found it informative, and check out this video on lessons we've learned about war from 2022. Until next time.